Welcome to If I Die Today. It's a podcast hosted by me, Samay Mishra. Before we begin, I want to make something really clear. This podcast is entirely independent of my professional work and my company. The views and opinions shared here by myself or by any guest are personal reflections meant to inspire, inform, and provide perspective. Nothing discussed should be taken as professional, financial, or medical advice, nor as a representative of any institution or organization that we're affiliated with. This is a space for honest conversation about life, purpose, and what truly matters, all shared in a personal capacity. Really thank you for tuning in to If I Died Today. Thank you so much. Hey everyone, this is Samay with If I Died Today. Today I have, a really awesome guest and one that I think you guys are really excited to hear from. I have Logan Johnson, professional basketball player and also a very close friend of mine. We actually went to St. Francis together during our time in high school. He was a year older than me. But from then he's done some pretty incredible stuff. So I thought it'd be awesome to have him on the pod. Logan, do you want to introduce yourself a little bit and just kind of give the audience a little bit of background on who you are and kind of what you do?
Yeah, first of all, thank you for having me on, bro. I know it's been tough to arrange, but I'm glad we got the time to get this in. Yeah, no, my name is Logan Johnson. I'm from the Bay Area, born and raised, grew up in Mountain View, California. Got four siblings that three of them ended up going to St. Francis, so I kind of just followed tradition from there and had some good role models to look up to, and I met some great friends along the way, and yeah, fortunate enough to now be playing professional basketball.
I love to ask guests kind of their early influences in life, kind of the earliest memories that they have too, just to get a little bit of grasp on who they are and kind of how they grew up. Tell me a little bit about, what's your earliest memories that categorize childhood for you? And was there any early influences or early mentors for you that you looked up to that were kind of that guiding light for you?
Yeah, I was blessed and fortunate enough to have a whole supporting cast in my life. My mom was in the military, and with my parents being separated, I had four siblings that, three older that really did a good job um, in helping me become the person I am today. And like I said, there was a lot of supporting cast. We had a lot of friends and family around that I would go stay with from time to time when my mom was being deployed. And yeah, like I played every sport growing up. So I was in baseball. I had friends in baseball that would bring me in during baseball season and make sure, I was, to school on time, making sure I had a roof over my head, food on my plate. Football, same thing. I had friends in football that would bring me in and do the same exact thing. Basketball, AAU, same way. So I can shout out a whole multitude of people that were engaged in my life, that really helped me become the person I am today. In short, I would say, obviously my mom, she was raising five kids on her own for a solid time in my life. So with that, it was I know that was difficult for her, but she was also working a full-time job. And her job, she was in the military. So you can only imagine how hectic it is when your mom's going to Iraq and Afghanistan and gone for months at a time, not knowing if she was going to come home, but still being that disciplinarian and that leader in the household to make sure everything stayed afloat.
Mm.
So I think that was it's definitely my mom. And I was fortunate enough to have, like I said, three older siblings that really paved the way for me. My oldest brother made sure I was at every practice on time. He worked a job when we were young, always came home, picked us up, brought us to where we needed to be. Um, and then I had my brother Tyler who played in the NBA. I mean, that was who I looked up to, I think, just off of seeing him play basketball, just being around that. We're one and the same. So, and then I had my disciplinarian when my mom was gone, with that being my sister, Lauren. She was feisty, and we didn't always see eye to eye at times, but looking back at it, I'm very grateful that she was the way she was with me, and not letting me really lose sight of my goals and my dreams, for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that gives everyone a little bit of, context in your family and kind of this larger community around you, not just, your direct siblings, older siblings and younger, but also community figures and families that, I mean,
everyone knows how it is with like travel basketball. You guys are going away for weekends, or if you're playing sports, more often than not, teams are eating together, and there's so much community involved in that. Would you say growing up, when did basketball start becoming something, a lot more important than the other sports, or something that you did and something that like what became a part of your identity as opposed to, just being like an athlete? Or was it always like I'm an athlete and then basketball just happened to be the one that really clicked later on?
Yeah, that's an interesting question because I loved football. I was pretty
Mm,
good at baseball. I was fast, I was athletic, had good hand-eye coordination. Football was like I could show my true emotion on the football field growing up, and I love
mm,
that. I had a lot of pain in my heart growing up. So I think being able to take frustrations out, I would cry on the football field and nobody could see me. You know what I mean? Like just pure raw
mm,
emotion that you got that helmet on.
mm,
So I truly I loved football growing up, and then I just so happened to be pretty good at basketball, and I think it all changed for me when I saw my brother go to college on a full ride scholarship to play basketball at Fresno State, and then eventually to sign a contract with the Miami Heat. I think that was right before my freshman year of high school, honestly.
mhm.
So I think right when that happened, it was kinda like we're around now he's sharing a locker room with Dwayne Wade, with Chris Bosh, Mario Chalmers, dudes that you just watched win the NBA Finals with LeBron the year before.
Right.
And so I think that's when it was like, "Yo, like, he could do this, I could do this." You know what I mean? One of those things. Um,
Mm,
and I think that's when all the other sports kinda just, like, faded off, and it was kinda just like, now I get the opportunity to go to Miami and train in the Miami Heat facility with my older brother who, is 1% of the world. You know what I mean? So,
right.
I think my freshman year of, high school is when everything I kinda just cut everything out and was just like, like, I get an opportunity to train at the highest level with the best, you know what I mean, coaches, trainers around, like, why not see where it can take me?
Yeah. Was there anything like when you were in those environments that you noticed early on when you were younger, or that had really shifted your belief system? Like, was it when you were training, you were like, oh, like maybe I could keep up with these guys, or you noticed something with their demeanor and or how your brother was moving that you really wanted to embody? Was there anything that you noticed back then that, that you stuck with, or that created a belief system that, despite the odds in this situation, if he can do it, I think that I can do it. Like, the belief, I think, is, like, the biggest difference maker between, a lot of people who do it, and even then, there's plenty of talented people who get into the right situations or get into the wrong situations who aren't able to make it happen. What was that thing for you that was, like, you can really internalize, "I can do this?"
Yeah, I think I always like I said, I always wear my heart on my sleeve, like, especially in sports. Um, growing up growing up, some people call it cocky. I think I was just overly confident, and I was cool with it. And I think that's what like you said, like, I had that belief early on, like, I could do whatever I set my mind to do, whether I have a million people telling me I can't, whether, I go through a rough stretch of games, of playing, like, this is what I wanna be, so this is what I'm gonna do. And I had no problem telling people that, you know what I mean? Like,
Nah, you didn't have any problem telling people that.
I would go into class, like, even from an early age, I would go into class and, people would be like, "Oh, well, teacher would be like, 'What do you wanna be when you grow up?' And I'd be like, I'm gonna be a professional basketball player, or I'm gonna be a professional athlete." And they would be like, "Ah, well, why not, look into this or, take this route? What if that doesn't work out?" And I kinda always had that chip on my shoulder, like, I don't have a plan B. There's no plan B or second option. There's plan A, and we're gonna get to it however we gotta get to it. And I think that propelled me in a direction of like I said, I don't some people would call it cocky. I think I was just super confident in my ability, my God-given ability, and was just fortunate that I had, like I said, I had a role model right in front of me that, I live with, I shared a room with, you know what I mean? Like that's so I think that helped early on, seeing him. And like I said, like I would go to the St. Francis games when he was playing there. And
Right, right.
You know, we had the same high school basketball coach, Coach Motil, and I would always go to the games, and they would refer to me as Little TJ, and I hated it. It was something that
Mm,
like I don't know, it just didn't feel right. Like I'm Logan. My name's Logan. Like stop calling me Little TJ. And it would bug me
mhm,
because like his friends, oh Little TJ, Little TJ, and I'm like, I'm not Little TJ. Like I
mm,
got my own name. You know what I mean?
right.
And so I think when I was going into high school, kind of took it personal, took it super personal to like know his records, to know the amount of wins he had, to know what he was ranked, everything. You know what I mean? And it was a blessing to have that right in front of me every day. You know what I mean? To where I know like I got to do this to get to where I want to be. And I was taking the bus at 5 in the morning just to get to that gym. And, Coach Motil, shout out to him. He'd always be there to open the gym before
Man,
school.
shout out to him.
Being there at 5 a.m., man, it was just like, I know my brother did it, so why can't I? You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think so. I think it really started early on, but I think like I said, my freshman year of high school, man, when I got to see him accomplish what he was able to accomplish, and I knew what I wanted to do.
I feel the same way with, like, obviously on a different scale with my brother. I think when you have an older sibling, especially one who achieves something in a level of success, you always admire that, but at the same time, it becomes this competitive thing to get your own validation and respect. Because when people would come up to me, whether it was like at a family party or a family get together or some other thing, they'd always come to me and ask me how my brother was doing. And it was the same thing. Like that would frustrate me so much because I think it would I think it was not out of fault of the person, right? Because like, they're just trying to create a conversation, but more often than not, it felt like, damn, like, they don't see me or they don't hear me or they don't have they don't treat me and respect me, and I think respect is the key word, is like, I wanted that respect associated with that. So I think there's like a turning point where like that respect and that competitive nature towards your brother also becomes like a level of admiration too, right? And now that I'm older, obviously, like me and him have like we're very locked in and we have a relationship where it's like I can admire him but also appreciate his faults too. But when you're in that phase, you're just like, I want to do everything that I can to beat this dude.
Yeah.
But they set such a good example, and I think they have to take that burden on as an older sibling. But it sounds like early on, that belief in yourself was already implanted, and it never felt. I think cockiness is one way to put it, but I think that it's one thing to be cocky and not perform. It's another thing to be cocky and then, say what you're going to do and do what you're going to do. And I think that that's a reinforcement mechanism. And especially in sports, competitive sports, I think you need to have that level of intensity and belief in yourself, or otherwise you're not going to be able to play against the best. So it sounds like as you continued to play, it became something that reinforced the same identity that you had of yourself. It's like, I am who I say I am, and I continue to show that time and time again.
100%.
But that sounds like we have a good idea of like your origins and kind of, how basketball became the sport of choice. So this journey, you talked a little bit about it, about the training. What part of that journey to Division I basketball, because that became the next pedestal post high school, required and demanded the most discipline? Was that transition from high school basketball to Division I basketball smooth? And what were the things that you kind of set yourself up early to do that kind of helped you out later on when you're in a more competitive environment?
Yeah. I think the game's just faster. You're playing against men. You know what I mean? I went to the University of Cincinnati, coming out of high school, playing in the American Conference. You had UConn, you had Houston, you had Wichita State. Like you had real deal basketball programs, and if you didn't bring your best, then like you would get killed. So um, I think I already had that level of competitive nature in me. So I think it was pretty much a seamless transition. I know that it required a lot more discipline in the fact of I'm on my own. I'm living on my own now, for the first time. There's so many distractions around in college. Everybody knows it.
Yeah.
And I think like our coach always used to say, like, if you want to be a pro, like, then you're going to treat yourself like a pro and you're going to approach everything you do as a pro. So you kind of have to put that in your mind, which is tough to do for an 18-year-old kid who thinks he knows it all. You know what I mean? And
Hmm.
I think I think that's probably the hardest transition is was grown accustomed to like you gotta watch what you put into your body. Like I said, you're on your own now. So it's not like you got mom just cooking in the kitchen and you can kind of, just whatever. You got to make sure you're on top of your schoolwork. You got to make sure you're getting from point A to point B on time. You're not missing meetings. You're not, you know what I mean?
Mm.
So I think that was like early on, it probably took like a month for real to like fully adjust to the difference and like knowing that if you really want to be the best at, what you're doing and not just another person, that you have to separate yourself in those ways and make sure you're getting up the extra reps in the gym, making sure you're locked into the weight room, to the treatments, making sure your body's taken care of, you're getting the right amount of rest. Yeah. So it's something that like never stops because it's all about your routine.
Yeah, and the Midwest weather is no joke. I remember when I first went to Ohio, that cold was like I thought I knew like a cold day, but we're spoiled in the Bay. Like a cold day is maybe a little bit rainy, you throw a puffer on. But in Ohio winter, like
That
I remember
black
trying to
ice.
get up for a 7 a.m. class, yeah, black ice. One time I slipped on my way to class and I turned right back around. I was like, I'm not going. It's a bad day.
I mean, if I'm gonna be honest here, I did the same thing. It was early on. It started snowing down. I was like, okay, cool. Like it's snowing. That's cool. Like I'm not used to snow.
Yeah.
Walked outside and right back around. I'm after missing.
So Cincinnati was a spurt, I think probably like a mental battle probably more than it was a physical one. But when things started clicking. There's a certain point where you decided to leave Cincinnati and join St. Mary's College back in California. What was the mindset behind that and the decision making there?
Yeah, my grandparents on my mom's side were when my grandpa was getting sick and my mom was their caregiver. So, while my mom's everywhere making sure everybody else is okay, now she's got to tend to her dad, my grandpa, and make sure he was doing okay. Coach Cronin was leaving Cincinnati that year going to UCLA. And that was one of the main reasons I chose Cincinnati. Like the competitive like nature he put us in every day was something that I respected. Whether everything was delivered properly is another story, but I think just like what he brought to the team as the leader was something I like truly enjoyed. And when he left, I was like, like I could stay here, keep building something. I love my time there. Um, but I think it was just one of those things where like I said, my grandparents were sick, or my mom was continually having to travel back and forth to Washington and California, and my little brother was still in the house. And one thing about, the Johnson family and how we roll, like family always comes first. So I was fortunate enough to have a great relationship with Coach Randy Bennett and Marcus Schroeder at the time. And they brought me in. I knew I wanted to be home with everything going on with my grandparents and with like I said, my mom having to go back and forth, and I didn't want to leave my little brother astray. So I think
Mhm.
that was my main vocal point of like, yeah, I can go to this school or this school or this school, but like St. Mary's is a great basketball program. It's a great school, and I get the opportunity to be home. So I think I took full advantage of that, and yeah, I'm happy I did.
Yeah, I think that entire school is happy you did. You guys had an awesome run, and not just like 1 year, but I think back to back years, you guys had a really cool run. Did it feel like there was a difference, like between being in that program and St. Mary's, or was it just the right time, right place?
It was definitely different. It was a complete culture shock and change, but it was a it was a blessing in disguise. Like St. Mary's is very much works on like the fundamentals of like I remember the first workout we were doing like Micans, and of course Micans are they're layups, right? Like simple.
Mhm.
We gotta go wide. You gotta tuck a ball, go wide, and you have to make like 10 straight on each one before you can go to the next thing. That first workout, I was like, this is like I knew this is where I needed to be to develop into the point guard, into the player that I wanted to be, because I think I brought something to them in terms of, like I said, that competitive like dog, like, and I think I was able to get the fundamentals early on there which propelled me to like kind of bring what I had from Cincinnati, but also like just turn me into a real basketball player, I think.
As far as like training that you're doing, I'm a little bit curious, like, were you really vigilant of like your nutrition at this point? Were you weightlifting like according to their program, or was there anything that you were doing separately that would, on your own time that would create some sort of separation there? Or was it all just like sticking to the program that they had set, or were they figuring out nutrition for you? Or was that like a personal effort?
Nah, they a little bit of both. They were making sure we got meals, and in terms of like weightlifting, I wish I would have done a little bit more at that time, but I also I felt good where I was at. So it was one of those things where it was like something that I feel like helped separate me and keep me explosive was I used to run the sand dunes a lot up in the city at Fort Funson. And if anybody knows anything about sand dunes, that's like I would say the closest you could get to like a game atmosphere shape um without actually being in a real basketball game.
Mm,
You run 7 hills as hard as you can, you're throwing up. Like, you're
100%
just
throwing up.
you're throwing up. I think that was something that I kinda fell in love with running the sand dunes. Like, if I really wanted to conquer something, um, and remain explosive, I think that's what I would always do because I just felt like it was something that, like, it was so rewarding to get to the top of the hill every time. Because every time you got to the top of the hill, you would look out into the ocean and it'd be breeze, you'd get a breeze. Whether you went in the morning, you would have the fog rolling in and it's cold and you're like you rolled out of bed at 6 a.m. and you're like, dude, like I don't want to do this. You know what I mean? And you're
Mhm,
in the car and then you get there and you're, as I said, it's miserable. You're cold, you can't breathe. You know what I mean? But then
mhm.
you look out over that water and you're like, dude, this is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So I think it was one of those things that I felt super rewarded like when I finished that, and I just continued to go back and back and back. I started bringing my friends, started bringing people in. Like, yo, we got to go here. We got to go here and get right. You got to run 8 hills and you're done. And that 8 hills can take 15 minutes, can take 30 minutes, but in that time frame, I promise you, when you're done and you're sitting down in the sand looking over the water, like you learn to just appreciate so much more. And so yeah, that
Yeah.
was something I did relentlessly.
No, I mean, I remember going with you, like, I think 1 or 2 times, and I was when you first told me, I was like, 8 times up a hill, like, that's fine, like, that'll be okay. I feel like by the 3rd one, I was like, "Fuck, what did I sign up for?" But you're so right about that. I mean, it's like the metaphor of the hill, I think, like, one, it's like you go up to the first time, and then you come down, and you keep going up and then you realize this is like resonant with life. No matter how many times you make it up a hill, whatever the hill is, eventually you got to come back down. It's almost poetic. You doing this task, it becomes somewhat of like a safe place for you, but also a
100%.
place where you know that you can push yourself and get to that inner part of you that needs to complete the task, and then you bringing your friends and people along with you to do that same thing. But I remember when we did that workout, that was like a little bit of insight into like how hard you were working at the time. Because for us, like we would just see you performing. We would just see you playing really well at our own practices. And then sometimes we'd run into each other at the 5 a.m. workouts. And I'd like what I would do there was completely different than what you would do there. When I had gotten one early morning workout with you, I was like, this person treats this game differently. And it was like a different level of love and passion at an early age. So I can only imagine how, as you're progressing through this, these things are just like wired in you at that point, but they're still just as difficult. So, but like, I think that's also resonant with your game too, is like you're an explosive player. You're someone who you get the ball to can create an impactful moment. And for anyone like who's played a 3-pointer versus getting a dunk or getting a steal and getting a really good dunk or dunking on someone like you do all the time is such a momentum changer. And I think is resonant with, you being on that hill or you being alone and training and probably from early on. But I think that kind of brings me to my next questions. Eventually, after your college career, you had the opportunity to play in the G League. And for those of you who don't know, Logan also won the G League dunk contest recently back in the Bay Area. I want to ask about both of those moments, but tell me a little bit what that shift was like on a professional level to play, um, and kind of what the difference was for you. and if there was an adjustment, and then tell me a little bit about winning the G League dunk contest and being a part of that back home in the Bay Area at a time like that.
Yeah, there wasn't too much of an adjustment for me because, like I said, I was blessed and fortunate to have somebody who's already been there, done that.
Mhm.
But it is different though because now you're doing it for yourself, and so you have to, like I said, if you want to be a pro, you're gonna have to carry yourself in a certain manner, and so I fully embraced whatever role I was gonna get. I ended up getting into a situation where when I first got to Oklahoma City was I made the team, and they kind of had figured out who was kind of always gonna play like their guys, right? And who's
Mhm.
kind of was just gonna be like the rest of the supporting cast. And I battled with those guys every day in practice. Um, Not only to make them better, but to make myself better because I knew like I was fortunate to be in a great situation in Oklahoma City with the Thunder are very they bring down players to the G all the time. All the time. And so you're constantly in practice with NBA guys or in competition with NBA guys, whether it's in a drill, whether you're in the game with them.
Yep.
Yeah, so I think you're just always in constant battles um with guys that play in the NBA, and that's where you want to be, like that's the ultimate goal, right? So it's like I took that very seriously, and so whatever role, whether I was gonna play 5 minutes one night, 7 minutes one night, whether a player was injured and my minutes boosted up and I was playing 15 minutes that game, 20 minutes that game, I knew I was gonna go out there and give whatever I had to do for our team to get the win. And I had a tough break. My second professional game in the first half, I went up and I blocked a shot, came down, landed, and I broke my rib. And so I got up, I tried to play it off. I was like, I knew I did something bad. But just kind of being that tough competitor that I am, like I didn't want to go out of the game. Like this is my first opportunity to play professional basketball. Like, and it was kind of snatched away from me so fast. Um, but I think it was a blessing in disguise because it kind of helped me see how much more you have to put into the game. You know what I mean? And you kind of figure out why you love it so much because everybody loves the game when, they're scoring 30 or they just hit the game winner or, the team's winning and their success is going up. But it's kind of like them dark days when you're injured and you're trying to work back towards something just to get to back to where you were, if not better.
Mhm.
Kinda just it feels like so much more rewarding when you are able to get back to that level. So, yeah, I was out for like a month and a half, and if like the G League season's only 5 months long, you play 10 games a month. So, playing 50
Mhm.
games and you miss a month and a half, you're missing a lot of basketball. And I was kinda able to work my way back, and like I said, our team was loaded. So, I wasn't getting minutes every night, but I knew like I had that connection with my coach, like where he was like, "Yo, we're not competing tonight hard enough. Like, yo, Lo, we need 4 minutes for you to turn the tide. You know what I mean? And get in there and do what you do." And it was kind of like, kind of just embrace whatever role I was given. Um, and tried to do it to the best of my ability. And, ended up winning the G League championship that year, my first year in the G, which was a crazy, surreal feeling just to obviously you love competing at that level, but to be able to win a championship in your first year and professionally is something that you don't take for granted. Um
Mhm.
and the band of brothers that you went to war with every day. So I got a lot of great memories from that. And then the following year I was put into a bigger role. I was a starting point guard out there and was able to do some really good things, had a lot of high moments, had a lot of low moments, but it was all about staying in the middle. Never getting too high when I was too high or never being too low when I was low. Kind of just staying in that even kill spot of knowing that as long as I'm doing the right things, I'm gonna get out of that slump or you know what I mean? If things are great, I can't just be like, "Oh yeah, I'm doing this and doing that." So, yeah, no, I had a full circle moment I was given the opportunity to do the dunk contest, and I was kinda banged up, going into
Mhm.
All-Star break, and I really didn't wanna do it because I was banged up, like, I was actually trying to get some good rest and some good treatment,
Yeah.
and I kinda just thought about it like, "Man, like, you don't gotta prove nothing to nobody out there, you just go be yourself," and it was one of those things where it was like, I get to go home in San Francisco and do the NBA G League dunk contest, like, how many people can say, I got to go back to my city and
Mhm.
compete in the dunk contest or compete in the All-Star Weekend, event, but not only do that, but win it. So,
Mhm.
I was able to bring my brother out for a dunk, and I got to wear his jersey that he wore when he was in the D League at the time.
Mhm.
And so it was a surreal moment, something that I'll cherish for the rest of my life, honestly, being him throwing me that lob off the side of the backboard was just something that it was like it still gives me good like I got goosebumps right now just thinking about it. Like it hits home for sure. And like I said, to not only do that and share that moment with my friends and family that were in the crowd, it was like I was back home. Like I was home in the Bay Area being able to compete in something like that. And so it was an honor and it was a really cool experience to be a part of it and then end up winning. It was just like icing on the cake, you know what I mean? It was something that like I said, not a lot of people get that opportunity to even be in an event like that. So
Yeah.
just super
No, that's
blessed.
true. Going back to what you had said a little bit earlier, I really like the idea of, post injury and kind of recovering back to that level and then being in a starting position. This idea of when the highs are high and the lows are low, like despite that, your goal was to stay in the middle. I think that resonates in so many like different ways in life because I think we see life as a game of highs and lows, but more often than not, just the way we work. Like once you reach those high points or you reach certain goals or you reach certain ambitions, that becomes the new baseline. So if you don't check yourself in those moments, especially the high ones, because I feel like those ones are very easy to fall into as like, this is what I should expect from life all the time. And then the low ones become so much more significant as a byproduct. Like now when you go through a low point, it's not like this is the end of the world. This is an opportunity for me to come back, to learn something, to grow from something. Like it's almost like an exciting point because it brings you back to this place. It's like what you said is it reminded me how much I love this game, or it reminded me how much I love what I do, because those are the moments that will test you the most. And I think those moments come most often right before like a moment of blessing or a new opportunity. So if you don't face those challenges and really show your resiliency on top of that, like realign with your purpose. Cause if happiness is your outcome or if that's your goal of choice, when hard times hit, I think that you'll really suffer because
Mhm.
when someone dies, someone gets sick, if you get sick or if something happens like that's not akin to happiness, then I think that you really suffer as a byproduct. But if your purpose is greater than that, then the suffering makes sense. Like the working really hard for things makes sense. The trying to maintain and then the high moments become so much more rewarding because they're aligned with your purpose as opposed to just like, I'm trying to be happy and feel happy in this moment. Obviously that's a byproduct oftentimes of like reaching your goals and that's great, but it's not sustainable. Like I don't think that's enough to keep you going through the storms that come with life. So I think in general that season of your life was really poetic. But tell me a little bit about now your journey now, being overseas, the isolation kind of associated with it, the grind that might be different, and tell me a little bit about what it's like playing right now overseas in Germany.
Yeah. No, it's who overseas hoops is no joke, man. Very competitive out here and kind of like you got to stick to a routine of knowing what you want out of the game and why you love it. Exactly what we just talked about. It's not I would say that the difference obviously the difference is the play style. It's a smaller court. There's no 3 seconds in the key. People can sit in the paint. But the goal is obviously the same. So, um the fans out here are crazy. They live and die with you. And if you're not playing well, they'll let you know. You know what I mean? And I think I love that because it shows the passion like that they have for the game. You know what I mean? It's not To me, it's not like the NBA where like people can just go to a game and be like, oh, yeah, like, I watched some highlights today or um whatnot, or this guy dunked on this guy. It's like out here, it's like war. Like these dudes take everything to heart. You know what I mean? And it makes you like want to win more. It makes you want to win for yourself, but also for them too. Because you're like, dude, these dudes are taking this this game like it's life or death. So you learn to appreciate it more. And I would say, obviously, yeah, the isolation is tough. Being away from everything being away from your family, your friends, your loved ones, like that's probably the toughest part. But inside of all that, like such a blessing to be able to see another part of the world, be in Europe. And it's not like you're overseas forever or doing that. Like, you get an opportunity that not a lot of people get, and it's to play basketball at a high level. And not only that, like you get to live in another part of the world and experience what that's like for, so many other people that are on this world. And so with that, we're in the middle. What are we like? The middle third of the season, um, and we're continuing to grow every day, and we're continuing to get better as a group, which is something that's exciting because you want to be playing your best basketball towards around this time, and I think that's where we're. I think that's where we're headed. You got depending on what team you're on, you have 4 other Americans on your team.
Mm.
And obviously there's a little bit of a language barrier depending on where you're at. I'm fortunate to be in Frankfurt, Germany, so a lot of people happen to speak English here. And, our head coach speaks English. Like everybody in the building speaks English. So they're coaching in English. And you also get to learn, culture. Like people out here in Germany, obviously they speak German. So you're learning a little bit of German here and there. Or you're learning about things with like living situations, and there's no like you learn how grateful you are that the way you have things in America. People
Mm.
live so simple out here. And you learn to like appreciate that. Like people are like, oh, my dryer's messed up. I can't dry my clothes. Like I gotta get a new dryer. Like there is no dryers out here. Like, you hang dry your clothes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, people are super simple out here. Like, you don't have an AC unit. You have to go buy an AC unit. So there's no like, you can't just be like, oh, it's hot outside. Like, I gotta turn on the air to, 70 degrees, 60 degrees. Like, so you learn to appreciate what you have. And you also learn to like live a lot more simpler. So it's been an experience, but it's been a good one for sure. And like I said, it's a blessing to be able to be playing basketball. Like I play basketball for a living, and I'm fortunate to make enough money to where, I like taken care of, and you get a living situation, you get a car, like they take good care of you out here. That is depending on where you're at. But I
Right,
know
right.
where I'm at, life ain't bad at all. Life ain't
That's
bad.
awesome. So, the kind of the purpose of the podcast is really just I had created because I felt like I wanted to create a platform to be heard, but also more so I wanted to give other people who I really admired the platform to, get some insight on their life and what they do, but more so their purpose and kind of the legacy and meaning that they want to create. Basketball mirrors life. So the highs, lows, and everything in between. What have those moments revealed about who you are kind of outside the sport?
Yeah. Um Everything. Like I said, like basketball is a game that we get to play. Like you can't take that for granted. Like, because there's a lot of people on this earth that just don't get the opportunity. That could be way more talented, way more gifted, but just don't have the right village around them that brings them in and takes care of them like I was taken care of. There's a lot of people that just aren't as fortunate. I think it's just about remaining you just got to remain true to who you are. And I think for me, I'm a big family guy. Anything that's making my family proud, I take that very seriously. The Johnson last name and understanding that it took a village for me to get here, and you're not just doing this for yourself. You got a whole band of people at home that are rooting for you, that help you get to the point that you're at. And I think I never lose sight of that in the highs and the lows. Now, it's easier said than done because you can get, people get sometimes stuck in their head. I know I was when I first got out here. I'm kind of breaking out of that now.
Mhm.
But when I struggled for the first few months I was out here, and I kind of had to get back to my like core values of like you got to do what got you here. You know what I mean? Like, to get
Mm.
out of the spot you're in. Because if you feel bad for yourself, what do you feel bad for? Like, you're playing, like I said, you're playing a game. Like, that's your job. You get to go out there and put sneakers on and run up and down a basketball court. Like, people have real world problems going on, and you get to do
Mm.
this as your job. Like, to a home every night, to more than enough money to be able to live and help yourself financially. And like I said, it's an opportunity. Like, a lot of people don't get that. So
Yeah.
I think it's definitely just about you got to remain true to who you are. And for everybody, it means something differently. But for me, like I said, man, just being a good person and somebody that my family is proud of. Like, when I get back to the States, my grandpa brags every day, like, no, like, I got this, my nephew, my grandson is in the NBA, and another one's playing professional sports, another one's in culinary school, another one's doing social work. Like, he brags about us all the time, like, and it
Mm.
and it doesn't stop with him. Like, there's a whole band of people that have been rooting for me my whole life, and so to be like, to lose sight of that because of the amount of money you're making, um, or because you're a professional athlete, like, that could never be something that um gets in my way.
That's
You
awesome.
yeah, it's crazy to think about though because it's something that's I feel like not talked about enough. But everybody who's been given the opportunity to play overseas or let alone play professional sports is like, you know what I mean, is a certain amount of the population, and it's a very low percentage. So to be
Mm.
able to do what I'm doing, I know that it was just more than my talent that got me here.
Yeah.
It's definitely a blessing. And you got to remember like what you're doing it for.
If the game were gone tomorrow, what part of yourself would you hope still remains constant?
Like I said, everything remaining constant in here, man. And then that
Mm.
competitive fire, that can never leave because it's in anything you do. If you wake up with the right routine and the right mindset every day, it doesn't matter what you're doing. And I feel like I told myself that from the jump. That's something that I've always lived by. So it's like that would never change. Like, always lace my sneaks up like it's the last opportunity I have to play the game.
Mm.
There, you know what I mean? So it's like one of those things where um if I could wake up with that same mentality every day, whether I'm a construction worker or working a 9 to 5 behind a desk or, um, a basketball trainer, a basketball coach, whatever it may be, in the next step of life, like, it's like one of those things where if you have that mindset, like, that will take you farther than anything else.
In this day and age, I think it's a helpful question for the people who are younger, who are viewing this. What's kind of your advice to the next generation, especially now with the onslaught of social media and AAU has been commoditized to a certain extent, these leagues and all these different um, different channels for playing basketball. And what's your advice to the next generation when it comes to, you know, building as a basketball player, as an individual? What's the advice to the youth?
I would say, like, yeah, my brother said this to me one time, and it's something that kind of really stuck with me. Is like, who are you when you don't get what you want?
Mm.
I mean, it means a lot of things, but to me, it's one of those things where it's like, if you're on that hill, like, and then you play really good, and then you're in a slump, like, are you still gonna be that same person? Are you gonna be able to look yourself in the mirror every time you brush your teeth at night or when you wake up in the morning? Because all that social media stuff and what goes on there is all fake. Yeah, So it's like one of those things where it's like you got to be able to live and be happy with yourself every day. And if you can't do that, then
Mm.
you're not doing something right. You got to be able to find out why. Why am I not where I want to be or who I want to be? Um, and it's easier said than done. People battle a lot of things every day that is not always talked about, but it's one of those things where you can't be satisfied with, living off of social media. And I think that for the younger generation, that's a big thing. Now with everything going on with NIL and stuff, some people's only goal is to, like, how many years can I get out of college? You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Can I stay in college for 5 years, 6 years? Like, can I do that? Like, I'm trying to, capitalize off this
Right.
NIL money, which is not a bad thing, but I just think that some people lose sight of it because when I was in school, you couldn't transfer you couldn't transfer 5 times and play 5 years in a row. Like, you just couldn't do it. It wasn't allowed. So it's like, obviously, you're gonna be in situations you may not like, but who are you gonna be? Are you gonna remain yourself, or are you gonna turn into a diva? Are you gonna turn into somebody that, like, is a cancer in the locker room, is a cancer to be around? Like, another one is, are you gonna be a fountain or a drain? You know? Are you gonna let the fountain flow, or are you gonna be the reason that it drains? I was told those 2 early on in my career, and that kinda stuck with me, and, like, during those highs and lows of life, of basketball, if you remain in that even kill state and you're always true to yourself and who you are, it's gonna take you a lot farther than, living on that hill, living on that constant, like, life is great right now. Oh, life is terrible right now. I feel bad for myself. Things like that. And I think obviously they know, like, the younger generation, it's just work ethic. It's the work you put in, like, that's what you're gonna get out of it, even when you're on the low points of it. You know what I mean? Like, when you feel like you can't hit a shot, when you feel like, "Oh, this is 7 games in a row I've played like trash." You know what I mean? And you're stuck, that work will never leave. So as long as you continue to get to it, like, you won't get to where you want to go. And that's the ultimate goal of it. It's not to be good for 15 games a season, 2 seasons. It's to make a career out of it and be on that constant even kill of my whole career. You know what I mean? And be that person to where when you walk into rooms, other people are like, "Yo, dude, that dude's a great teammate." You know what I mean? That dude goes above and beyond, and he never made it about him. I think those things take you a long way in life, bro. And I think it
Yeah.
resonates in basketball, but it even resonates on everyday life for somebody that worked, like I said, works a 9 to 5, works whatever they work in. Like, it takes you so much farther to be that even kill and be true to yourself person than trying to put on a front.
Yeah. No, 100%. And I think that also being yourself and doing those things is something you can control. Like when there's so many things in life that you can't control, your attitude towards things and how you carry yourself are always, I feel like, within the realm of your control, no matter what's going on. Um, and the final question I have for you is if Logan Johnson died today, God forbid, what part of your story would you want people to remember the most?
And the person I was, nothing about sports, the person I was. Like I said, I come from a family where we very family oriented. Like, if I was to go today, is like my family gonna be proud of the person I was, the person I became, the legacy I left behind. Like, um, that's something I think about often. And so I think that's the most important. Like, I don't think it's ever, like, gonna be like, "Oh, it's when Logan dunked on this dude," or, when he won this dunk contest, or when he went to Cincinnati, or I don't think it's ever gonna be something like that. I think it's always about, like, "Nah, that dude was a real solid dude." Like, and I think that's something that goes a lot farther than anything in sports, anything that you go on through your life. Like, what type of person were you? And I think as long as
Yeah.
it's in a good light, that's all that matters to me.
Yeah. No, I can tell you 100%. I've already told you multiple times, but when I was in high school, it was definitely an inspiration to be around you and learn from you. And we always looked at you as like an older figure that we could rely on, and you made people feel seen for sure. And I'm sure your family can tell that 100 times fold. And the village around you too, and the bay, and so on. I think you create pockets of people and community where you are, and no matter who they are, you make people feel seen. You make people feel special, and you carry yourself in a light that's like, I want to be like him, or like I want to carry myself the same way he carries himself. And you feel that in every room that I've been in with you, and I'm sure in every room that's to come. So, it's really awesome to have you as the first podcast of the year. I'm looking forward to, hopefully having you back one day. But
Sure.
thank you so much for joining. I'm sure if anyone wants to follow Logan's journey, their team is still in season. I'll go ahead and leave all his social media and links to staying in touch with his journey below. But yeah, man, thanks so much for joining on.
Yeah, no, it's love, bro. I appreciate you having me, man.
Thank you for listening to If I Died Today with your host, Samay Mishra. Every story reminds us that life's meaning isn't found in what we achieve, but in who we become. Join us next time as we explore another journey, another life, and another reason to keep going. New episodes drop soon. so subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And if today's conversation moved you, leave us a review or share it with someone who'd appreciate the message.